First, we have Google, and they're establishing what looks like a true personal intelligence moat. They're using contextual data that money, it just can't buy. Second, something we're calling the chip revolt, and it's being headlined by OpenAI's staggering, very high-stakes $10 billion bet on Cerebras. It's signaling the end of single-source hardware dependency.
And then third, we're going to dissect the collapse of traditional market research. The synthetic consumer era has, I think we can say, definitively arrived. The implications there are instant, radical, and global. And then finally, we'll look at the legal closing of the data-free ride. We're seeing the absolute necessity of strong IP and likeness protection in the age of generative AI, where, every piece of data is becoming a compensated commodity.
Four huge topics, and each one threatens to disrupt a multi-billion-dollar industry. Or, in the case of hardware, redistribute tens of billions in supply chain spending. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start with the one advantage Google holds. The one that rivals like OpenAI can only dream of acquiring: proprietary personal data context.
It's really the foundational currency of advanced AI, isn't it? I mean, beyond raw compute, it's deeply contextualized data. And in the race to build a truly useful proactive AI, well, Google has just unveiled its trump card.
This personal intelligence beta feature, it's for Gemini AI Pro and Ultra subscribers in the US. And it is not a minor update. This is the realization of a strategy that's been decades in the making. We've seen attempts at personalized AI before, sure, but this is about deep, unified reasoning across a user's entire digital life, not just, fragmented access to individual apps.
Right. It's the move from an assistant that just answers your questions to an agent that proactively reasons across your entire digital history. What Google has done is enable Gemini to reason across a user's proprietary application suite. We're talking Gmail, photos, your YouTube viewing history, aggregated search data, all of it, simultaneously and crucially, automatically.
And that key is unified reasoning. That's the phrase. We're not talking about chaining prompts where I have to say, search my email for the receipt, and then, okay, now look in my photos for the item I bought.
No, the user doesn't have to do that work.
Right. The AI is tasked with solving a problem, and it's supposed to pull the necessary context from text, from images, from video, all without the user having to specify which app to even look in.
And that requires a really sophisticated multimodal fusion architecture. And it has to be running continuously in the background. I mean, think about the complexity there. The AI has to distinguish between structured data, like the date in an email, and then unstructured contextual data, like the metadata on an image or what you said in a YouTube comment 5 years ago. And it has to do this in real time to generate one cohesive response.
And the anecdote from VP Josh Woodward really brought this home. He talked about being at a tire shop, a situation where you typically need to access several pieces of scattered information very quickly. Your vehicle specs, previous maintenance records, maybe a photo of the current tire tread.
Right. Things that are all in different places.
Exactly. And the AI uses context from his photos and his emails to proactively provide all the necessary information right there in the moment. It transforms the AI from a search tool into this seamless, proactive utility layer.
And that right there is the core difference. It's the difference between where Google is headed and where almost everyone else is currently operating. Competitors have largely raced to achieve parity on general reasoning tasks. If you ask Gemini, ChatGPT, or Claude about global economics, the answers are going to be mostly indistinguishable.
They're all pretty good.
They're all very good. But when the AI can tap into your individual life history, your travel receipts, your purchasing patterns, the faces and places in your photo library, it transcends general capability. It becomes indispensable utility.
Okay, and this is where it gets really interesting and why this establishes Google's moat. The sheer scale of it and the existing infrastructure are just unmatchable. Billions of users already have their lives, their entire context, graphs stored, structured, and active within the Google ecosystem. OpenAI can try to partner and integrate, but they have to convince you to sync your life piece by piece, app by app, into a third-party environment. Google just needs you to tick one box within the environment you already inhabit and, for the most part, trust.
It's the ultimate network effect applied to data, but with this added layer of stickiness. As frontier models equalize in capability, and they are, very rapidly, deep integration with personal context becomes the ultimate differentiator. This is the new deep moat.
But that moat is built right on the edge of public trust, which is, as we know, highly fragile. Google is demanding unprecedented access to our personal data, and that introduces a huge liability risk. They must be addressing this head-on with some critical guardrails. But How convincing are they?
They seem to recognize the gravity of the trade-off. To maximize the utility while, attempting to minimize the trust violation, they've implemented two key controls. First, the feature is explicitly off by default.
Okay, that's critical.
It is. It means the user has to make an active, informed choice to opt in, recognizing the enormous value exchange they are making.
And the second point, I imagine, has to address that existential fear we all have,
Mhm.
that our personal data is going to become part of the global training set.
Exactly. And Google explicitly states that it will not train its AI models directly on connected information like your inboxes or your photo libraries accessed through this feature. This promise is crucial. They're trying to assure you, the user, that the data is used for you, the individual, but not by Google, the corporation, to improve the underlying model. That promise is the very thin line separating utility from violation in the public's mind.
But if I'm an executive or a strategist listening right now, I have to ask, how do we verify that promise? I mean, in a black box AI system, verification is basically impossible. This places the strategic reliance entirely on Google's corporate trustworthiness and their internal monitoring.
Absolutely.
The value of this deep, personalized context is enormous for creating sticky, proactive products.
Cool.
But the liability of a breach, or even just the perception of misuse, is exponentially higher.
And it forces every competitor to think about their own personal graph strategy. If you don't own the data, you have to partner aggressively, or you have to start building that trust right now. And this trust issue is exactly why Google's sheer platform depth continues to be such a barrier.
And we saw a really interesting counterpoint today, actually, with OpenAI's launch of ChatGPT Translate. They're trying to chip away at Google's dominance in a core utility area. But the limitations of their launch immediately highlight Google's existing platform and infrastructure advantage.
Yeah, ChatGPT Translate certainly offers some clever AI-powered prompt options. You can, reshape a translation to sound formal or simple for a child or academic. And that's a nice cutting-edge feature. It demonstrates their model's sophistication. But when you look at the foundational utility layer, the gap is vast.
It really is. The fundamental infrastructure features that Google Translate mastered years ago, they're just missing from the ChatGPT offering. We're talking comprehensive document uploads, full website translation capabilities, real-time conversation interpretation, and, critically, broad language support. Google backs over 50 more languages.
And this just reinforces the idea that while OpenAI can compete effectively on the creative application layer, true platform depth, the infrastructure you need to run comprehensive, low-latency, globally available utility, is still a massive multi-decade barrier to entry. Google's advantage isn't just data, it's the robust, battle-tested systems they've built over 20 years that support the scale of these personalized offerings.
So what does this all mean for developers? I mean, this personal intelligence sets an impossibly high new benchmark. If your model doesn't understand the user's life context, it's going to feel archaic next to Gemini Ultra. You have to develop integration strategies now.
And for investors and strategic leaders, the race for contextual data is now the main event. It forces every competitor, Meta, Apple, and certainly OpenAI, to either aggressively develop their own personal context graph through deeper OS or social integrations, or they have to find strategic partners with massive, trusted data ecosystems. Context is the new API.